Close your eyes for a moment. Allow your breath to find its own rhythm, like waves kissing the sand on a distant beach. Now, place your hand over your chest and feel. There, in that rhythmic, constant movement, exists something older than mountains, deeper than time measured in calendars. It's your heart, but it's also the echo of an ocean you carry within yourself. Have you ever wondered why the sound of the sea calms us so deeply? Why rain whispering against the window brings such inexplicable peace? Perhaps it's because something in you recognizes these sounds. Not with your mind, but with something deeper. A memory that isn't stored in thoughts, but inscribed in the very architecture of your body. Come with me on a journey. It won't be an ordinary trip, the kind made with maps and compasses. It will be an expedition inward into the silent depths of who you are. We'll dive into the primordial waters that still flow in your veins, discover the aquatic secrets your bones keep, and understand how creatures that once glided through ocean currents left you an inheritance so precious that every breath you take still echoes the rhythm of the tides. Imagine for a moment that your body is an ancient book written over millions of years. Each page tells a story, each chapter reveals a transformation. And in the first pages of this book, before the first word was ever written on dry land, there was water, so much water. And in it, the first drafts of what you would come to be. This isn't just a story about evolution, it's a love letter written by time, addressed to you. It's the narrative of how aquatic life didn't stay behind when our ancestors first stepped onto dry land. On the contrary, they brought it with them, hidden in every cell, preserved in every gesture, whispered in every heartbeat. Sometimes, when you're very quiet, you can almost hear it. It's like a distant song, sung in a language you don't know, but that, strangely, you understand. It's the song of the sea within you, a melody that began hundreds of millions of years ago and hasn't finished being composed yet. Let's travel back in time. Not just a few years or centuries, but hundreds of millions of years. Imagine Earth as it was then, a blue planet almost completely covered by a vast ocean. There were no forests to whisper secrets to the wind, no birds to paint the sky with their flights, no flowers to perfume the breeze. There was only water, sky, and the infinite promise contained in every molecule dancing in the marine currents. In this liquid cradle, something extraordinary was happening. Life, still shy and microscopic, was beginning to experiment. Like a child playing with building blocks, it tested forms, invented structures, created possibilities. And at some point in this cosmic play, the first beings we can call fish emerged. Though they were as different from the fish you know as a seed is different from a centuries-old tree. Think of water as life's first home. Not just a place where it lived, but an element that shaped it, that whispered instructions into every cell about how to grow, how to move, how to exist. Water wasn't just the setting, it was the very language in which life learned to express itself. Do you know why your body is composed of about 60% water? It's not coincidence or chance, it's memory. Every cell of yours still remembers the primordial ocean, still yearns for that liquid embrace that was the first home of all life on Earth. When you drink a glass of water, you're not just quenching thirst, you're renewing an ancient pact, honoring an alliance that began when the world was still young and full of possibilities. The first fish were creatures of touching simplicity. Imagine beings without jaws, gliding through dark waters like thoughts floating in a sleeping mind. They had no teeth to bite, no elaborate fins for complex maneuvers. They were essentially living tubes with a revolutionary idea, a dorsal cord, the first draft of what would one day become your spine. This cord was like a thread of hope stretched through the body, a promise that life could be more than just floating at the mercy of currents. It was the first step toward you, yes, you who are reading these words now, supported by a spine that is the direct descendant of that first courageous attempt to give structure to movement. Come closer. I want to show you something fascinating about your own body. Extend your hand and observe it for a moment. See how your fingers move, how they articulate, how they respond to your commands with a precision you consider natural. Now, let me tell you a secret. This hand was once a fin. Not literally, of course. You didn't have fins that magically transformed into hands. But the bones that now form your fingers, the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the delicate carpal bones, all have counterparts in the fins of ancient fish. It's as if nature had taken a design that worked perfectly in water and reimagined it for land. When an ancient fish moved its fins to navigate through currents, it was writing the first draft of the movements you make now when writing, waving, caressing. The basic architecture remained, only the details changed. It's like a song that's been transposed to another key. The essential melody remains the same, just expressed differently. But it's not just your hands that hold aquatic memories. Your entire skeleton is a walking natural history museum. Your ribs, which now protect your air-filled lungs, evolved from structures that once helped fish maintain their shape in water. Your skull, that precious dome that guards your thoughts and dreams, has its roots in bony plates that protected the primitive brains of marine creatures. And what about your senses? Your eyes, those windows through which you contemplate the world, first learned to see through water. That's why you still produce tears, not just to express emotion, but to keep your eyes moist, to constantly recreate that original aquatic environment where vision first flourished. Your inner ear, that delicate labyrinth that keeps you balanced and oriented, evolved from a system that helped fish detect vibrations in water. When you feel dizzy after spinning, you're experiencing confusion in the same system that once helped marine creatures navigate in 3 dimensions through the ocean. Now, let's talk about that constant drum in your chest, your heart. Place your hand over it again and feel its rhythm. This magnificent organ, which pumps life through every corner of your being, has a story that began in the depths of the sea. The first hearts were simple structures, just muscular tubes that pulsed, pushing fluids through primitive bodies. Imagine an ancestral fish with its 2-chambered heart beating in a rhythm that echoed the waves of the sea around it. It was a design elegant in its simplicity. One chamber received blood, the other pumped it forward. Your human heart, with its 4 sophisticated chambers, still carries the memory of that original design. It's as if evolution had taken that first sketch and refined it, added complexity, improved efficiency, but the fundamental idea remained the same. Create a rhythm, maintain a flow, sustain life. Do you know why the sound of a heartbeat is so universally comforting? Perhaps it's because it echoes not just the heart of the mother who carried us, but also the primordial rhythm of the ocean, the waves breaking, the tides rising and falling, the eternal pulse of the sea that was life's first home. When doctors listen to your heart, they hear sounds they describe as lube-dub, lube-dub. But I like to think that if we listened with deeper ears, more attuned to history, we would hear the distant echo of waves, the whisper of ancient currents, the song of the sea that still lives in every beat. And it's not just the heart itself that tells this aquatic story. Your entire circulatory system, those liquid highways that traverse your body, is a miniature recreation of oceans and rivers. Your blood, salty as the sea, carries in its chemical composition a memory of the primordial ocean. When you taste a tear or the sweat on your skin, you're tasting the ancient sea that still flows within you. Take a deep breath now. Feel the air entering through your nostrils, descending through your trachea, inflating your lungs. This action's so simple, so automatic that you perform it thousands of times a day without thinking, is actually the finale of one of the greatest evolutionary adventures ever undertaken. There was a time when breathing meant something completely different. For fish, breathing meant extracting dissolved oxygen from water through gills, those delicate structures that look like fans of flesh, constantly filtering water in search of the precious gas that sustains life. Gills were marvels of biological engineering. Imagine filaments as fine as hair, covered by a network of blood vessels so delicate that oxygen could pass directly from water to blood. It was a perfect system for aquatic life, but completely useless in air. The transition from gills to lungs didn't happen overnight. It was a journey of millions of years, full of experiments, attempts, and gradual adaptations. Some fish developed air sacs, organs that could store air swallowed from the surface. Others modified their throats to absorb oxygen directly. Your lungs are the descendants of these first courageous experiments. When you breathe, you're using organs that evolved from structures that were once swim bladders, air sacs that helped fish control their buoyancy. It's as if nature had said, if we can use these sacs to float, why not to breathe? But here's something truly fascinating. You still carry vestiges of your ancestral gills. During your development in the womb, for a brief period, you had gill slits, small openings in the neck that are quickly reabsorbed and transformed into other structures. It's as if your body quickly retold the entire evolutionary history, remembering where it came from before arriving where it is. Close your eyes again and pay attention to the sounds around you. Perhaps you hear the wind, distant voices, the soft hum of electrical appliances. Now imagine what it would be like to hear underwater, the sounds arriving muffled, distorted, traveling 4 times faster than in air. Your ears, these complex structures hidden on the sides of your head, began their evolutionary journey as simple vibration detectors in water. Fish don't have external ears like yours. They don't need them. Water conducts sound directly to internal structures that detect the smallest vibrations. But fish have something you lost in your journey to land, the lateral line. Imagine a series of sensors running along the body, capable of detecting the smallest pressure changes in water. It was like having a sixth sense, a 3-dimensional awareness of the aquatic environment that allowed fish to navigate in total darkness, detect predators, find prey. You no longer have a lateral line, but you carry other sensory inheritances from the sea. Your sense of balance, for example, depends on fluids in your inner ear, small personal oceans where tiny crystals float, informing your brain about your position in space. When you get dizzy after spinning, it's because you've disturbed these internal seas, creating waves where there should be calm. And your eyes? Your eyes have an even more extraordinary story. The first eyes were just light-sensitive patches, cells that could distinguish between light and dark, nothing more. But in the clear waters of ancient seas, vision became a powerful evolutionary advantage. Your eye's cornea, that transparent dome that focuses light, works differently in air than it would in water. That's why your vision gets blurry when you open your eyes underwater. Your eyes still expect to be in air. But the tears that constantly bathe your eyes are salty like the sea, maintaining a miniature aquatic environment so your corneas work perfectly. Touch your skin now. Feel its texture, its temperature, its response to touch. This barrier between you and the world, this largest organ of your body, also holds deep memories of your aquatic heritage. Fish skin is a marvel of aquatic adaptation. Covered by scales and a protective layer of mucus, it glides through water with minimal resistance. Their scales are like flexible armor, protecting without impeding movement, reflecting light in patterns that can camouflage or communicate. Your human skin may seem very different, but look closer. When you spend too much time in water, your fingers wrinkle. For a long time, it was thought this was simply the skin absorbing water. But recent discoveries suggest something more interesting. It's an active response from your nervous system, creating grooves that improve grip on wet surfaces, an adaptation that would be useful for ancestors who needed to grasp things in aquatic environments. And what about goosebumps? When you feel cold or strong emotion, tiny muscles at the base of each hair contract, creating that characteristic goose skin texture. In furry mammals, this helps create an insulating layer of air. In you, with your sparse hair, it's just an echo of an ancient adaptation, but one that began with the need to regulate temperature, something critical when life made the transition from water to land. Your skin also maintains a crucial barrier against water loss, a concern fish didn't have. Living in air means constantly fighting against desiccation, and your skin is the first line of defense in this battle. The glands that produce oils and sweat are terrestrial adaptations, but the basic principle, maintaining the body's water balance, is a necessity that began in the sea. Now let's talk about the most extraordinary of all inheritances, your brain and nervous system. Close your eyes and think of something, anything. This simple act of thinking is possible thanks to a network of neurons that has its roots in the first creatures that dared to have a centralized nervous system. The first fish had simple brains, little more than enlargements at the front end of the spinal cord. But even these primitive brains were revolutionary. They centralized information processing, allowing more coordinated responses and more complex behaviors. Your human brain, with its 86 billion neurons, still maintains the basic architecture that was established in those first fish brains. The brainstem, the oldest and most fundamental part of your brain, controls basic functions like breathing and heartbeat using patterns that were established hundreds of millions of years ago. When you sleep and dream, your brain goes through phases that echo ancient patterns of neural activity. Some scientists suggest that REM sleep, that phase where the most vivid dreams occur, may have evolved first in aquatic animals. It's as if, every night, your brain returned to a primordial state, processing information in a way your aquatic ancestors would recognize. And there's something poetically beautiful in the fact that the same neurotransmitters that allow you to feel joy, sadness, fear, or love were already present in the brains of ancient fish. The serotonin that influences your mood, the dopamine that mediates your pleasure, these messenger molecules were there from the beginning, creating the first subjective experiences in the primordial seas. Have you ever noticed how certain rhythms seem to be engraved in your being? The cycle of sleep and wakefulness, patterns of hunger and satiation, even moods that ebb and flow like invisible tides. All these rhythms have deep roots in your aquatic heritage. In the sea, life learned to dance with natural rhythms, tides rising and falling, light penetrating water layers in predictable cycles, currents following seasonal patterns. Fish developed internal clocks to synchronize their lives with these rhythms, and you inherited these same timing mechanisms. Your circadian rhythm, that internal clock that tells you when to sleep and when to wake, uses the same basic principles that were developed by marine creatures to track light cycles in the ocean depths. The same proteins that mark time in your cells were already marking time in fish cells hundreds of millions of years ago. But there are even more subtle rhythms at work. Women, you carry in your bodies a particularly poetic echo of oceanic cycles. The menstrual cycle, with its periodicity close to the lunar cycle, suggests an ancient connection with the tides. Although science still debates the exact connections, it's undeniable that life first learned to tell time by watching the moon reflected in the waters of the sea. Even your breathing follows rhythms that echo aquatic patterns. Notice how your breathing naturally speeds up and slows down, how it deepens and becomes shallow in cycles. It's as if each breath were a miniature wave, rising and falling on an interior beach. Let's now explore something even more subtle, the way you move. Stand up if you can and take a few steps. Feel how your body moves through space, how your muscles coordinate this complex ballet you simply call walking. Movement began in water, where physics is different. In water, you float, gravity is attenuated, and movement happens in 3 dimensions with equal ease. Fish developed a way of moving that is pure poetry, undulations that travel through the body, fins that constantly adjust course, a constant dance with the currents. When you walk, you're using a modified version of these same principles. The way your spine moves, creating a subtle wave that travels from hip to shoulders, is a distant echo of the undulation that propelled fish through water. Your arms swinging in counterpoint to your legs create a balance that has its roots in the need for stability during swimming. But it's in water that this inheritance becomes most obvious. Have you noticed how, even without ever being taught, a baby placed in water will make swimming movements? How our bodies seem to remember how to move in water, even if our conscious mind has never learned. It's because the instructions are written at a deeper level, in the very design of your nervous and muscular system. And there's a particular grace in human movement that speaks of our aquatic origins. The way a dancer flows through space, how an athlete finds that moment of perfect fluidity where effort disappears and only pure movement remains in these moments. We're channeling the memory of when movement was easier, when gravity was a suggestion and not a law. Now let's touch on something even deeper, your emotions. It may seem strange to connect feelings to fish, but let me show you how even your emotional life has roots that extend to the primordial ocean. Fear, that primitive emotion that speeds up your heart and sharpens your senses, was born in dark waters where danger could come from any direction. The first fish that developed the ability to feel and respond to fear survived to pass their genes forward. When you feel that shiver down your spine when perceiving danger, you're experiencing an alarm system that was refined over millions of years of aquatic evolution. But it wasn't just fear that was born in the sea. Curiosity, that impulse to explore, to investigate the new, also has its roots in fishes' need to explore new territories, find food, discover mates. When you feel that itch of curiosity, that desire to know what's on the other side, you're responding to an impulse that led the first vertebrates to explore every corner of the ocean. And what about love? Yes, even love has its aquatic origins. Fish were some of the first animals to develop parental care, to form pairs, to recognize and prefer certain individuals. The same chemical systems that flood your brain with oxytocin when you hug someone dear were already creating bonds between marine creatures when the world was young. The very capacity to feel, to have subjective experiences, to not just respond to the world but experience it internally, is a gift that came from the sea. When you contemplate a sunset and feel that mixture of melancholy and wonder, you're using neural systems that first created subjective experience in the blue depths. We now arrive at the greatest mystery of all consciousness. This extraordinary phenomenon that allows you not just to exist, but to know you exist. That allows you to read these words and contemplate them, to question them, to connect them with your own experience. When and how consciousness emerged is one of the great unanswered questions of science. But we know it must have started simply, perhaps as nothing more than a vague sensation of being, a primitive distinction between self and not self. And this first spark of consciousness probably flickered to life in some marine creature. Imagine the moment, impossible to locate in time, but profound in its meaning, when an aquatic being for the first time not just reacted to light, but somehow saw, not just detected vibrations, but heard, not just responded to stimuli, but felt. This moment, multiplied and refined through eons, led to the complex consciousness that now allows you to ponder your own existence. Your consciousness carries echoes of that first aquatic consciousness. The way your attention flows from one thing to another, how thoughts arise and disappear like bubbles rising to the surface. There's something fluid, something aquatic in the very nature of consciousness. And perhaps that's why water has such a profound effect on our states of consciousness. The sound of rain that calms, the bath that relaxes and allows ideas to flow, the contemplation of the sea that expands our perspective. It's as if water had the power to reconnect us with deeper states of consciousness, states that were first explored by aquatic minds. Now, having traveled through time and body to discover your aquatic roots, let's look forward. What does it mean to carry this oceanic heritage in a world that seems increasingly distant from water? What can we learn from this deep connection? First, there's humility in recognizing that we're not creatures separate from nature, but deeply intertwined with it. Every time you breathe, your body retells the story of life leaving the sea. Every beat of your heart echoes the rhythm that first pulsed in aquatic creatures. You're not just a visitor on this planet, you're part of its deepest history. There's also responsibility in this recognition. The oceans that were our first home continue to be vital to our existence. They regulate our climate, produce the oxygen we breathe, feed billions. When we pollute the seas, when we ignore their warming, when we treat the oceans as infinite deposits for our waste, we're disrespecting not just the environment, we're disrespecting our own history, our own essence. But there's also hope and inspiration in this connection. If life was able to make the extraordinary journey from water to land, to transform fins into hands, gills into lungs, then what other transformations are possible? What new chapters are yet to be written in the story of life? You carry within yourself proof that profound changes are possible, that life finds ways even in the face of the most intimidating challenges. When you face your own challenges, remember that you're descended from creatures that dared to leave the safety of the ocean to explore a completely new world. That courage, that adaptability, that willingness to change, all of it is encoded in your cells. And so we come to the end of our journey, or perhaps it's better to say, to the beginning of a new understanding. You began this reading as someone who perhaps had never deeply considered your connection to fish, to the sea, to the primordial waters from which all life emerged. I hope now you see yourself differently. You are a walking ocean. Not just in the poetic sense, but literally. The water in your cells, the salt in your blood, the rhythms that govern your body, all speak of your aquatic heritage. You didn't leave the sea behind when your ancestors crawled onto land. You brought it with you, transformed, but not forgotten. The next time you feel disconnected, lost in the frenetic rhythm of modern life, remember the sea within you. Place your hand over your heart and feel that ancient rhythm. Breathe deeply and imagine oxygen traveling through pathways that were first traced by marine creatures. Let your thoughts flow like currents, without forcing, without fighting against the tide. There's a deep peace in recognizing that you belong to a story larger than your individual life, that you're part of a narrative that began billions of years ago and will continue billions of years into the future. Your joys and sorrows, your successes and failures, your loves and losses, all are notes in a symphony the ocean began to compose when the world was young. And perhaps, just perhaps, when you're at the seashore, watching the waves arrive and depart in their eternal rhythm, you'll feel not that you're visiting something strange and distant, but that you're coming home. Not physically, your days of living in water were left behind hundreds of millions of years ago. But spiritually, emotionally, you'll be recognizing your source, honoring your origins, celebrating the extraordinary journey that brought you from the sea to this moment. The waves will continue arriving as they always have. The sea will continue its cycles, indifferent but not distant. And you, terrestrial creature with an aquatic heart, will continue carrying the ocean within yourself, in every cell, every breath, every heartbeat. When life seems too dry, when the terrestrial world weighs on your shoulders with its relentless gravity, remember that you have an interior ocean. It's not an empty metaphor, it's a profound biological truth. You can access this fluidity, this capacity to flow around obstacles that water taught life so long ago. Notice how tears come when emotions overflow. It's the interior sea finding an outlet. Note how sweat beads on your skin when you exert yourself. It's the internal ocean regulating your temperature as currents regulate the planet's climate. Perceive how your mouth salivates before a delicious meal, its water preparing the way, as it always has. You are living proof that the greatest journeys don't leave their origins behind, but transform them. Just as a river carries within itself the memory of its source even when it flows into the sea, you carry the memory of the ocean even while walking on dry land. And there's beauty in this, a deep and moving beauty. Every human being who has ever lived, who lives now, who will live in the future, shares this same heritage. We are all descendants of the sea, all carriers of interior oceans, all connected by this common origin that transcends all the superficial differences we create between us. When you meet another human being, any human being, know that you're meeting another walking ocean. Behind the eyes that meet yours, there's the same ancient sea. In the blood that runs through their veins, the same primordial salinity. We are, all of us, relatives not just to each other, but to every creature that has ever navigated, swum, or simply floated in the waters of the world. This is the great truth the fish bequeath to us. We are not isolated beings, but part of a fluid continuity that extends through deep time. Every breath you take is a link in this unbroken chain. Every beat of your heart adds to the rhythm that began in the depths and will continue until the last ocean dries. But the oceans won't dry, not if we remember who we are, where we came from, what we carry within us. Water always finds a way, they say, and life that was born in water carries this same persistence, this same capacity to flow around obstacles, to find new routes, to always keep moving. So when you feel stuck, remember that you descend from creatures that found a way to breathe air. When you feel limited, remember that your ancestors transformed fins into wings and hands. When you feel alone, remember that you carry within yourself the same ocean that connects all the beaches of the world. You're not just an individual navigating through life, you're a wave in the continuous ocean of existence, unique in your form but inseparable from the greater sea. Your life, with all its particularities and personal details, is a unique expression of patterns that were established when the world was water and possibility. And so, dear traveler who accompanied me through these depths, I leave you with this final thought: you're never truly far from the sea. No matter where you live, no matter how distant from the nearest ocean, you carry the primordial waters in every fiber of your being. You are, were, and always will be a creature of the sea who learned to walk on land, but never forgot how to flow. When night falls and you lay your head down to sleep, listen carefully. Beyond the sound of your heart, beyond the whisper of your breath, you can almost hear it, the distant waves of an interior sea, gently reminding you that your home have always been home in the ocean you carry within yourself. May you navigate smoothly through the currents of life, always remembering that you have within yourself all the wisdom of the sea, the patience of the tides, the persistence of the waves, the depth of the abysses, and the eternal promise of renewal that each wave brings as it kisses the beach and returns to the sea. And if someday you want to talk more about these interior waters, about the fish that were our ancestors, about the sea that still lives in you, I'll be here like the waves that always return, ready to explore again the depths of this extraordinary story that is your heritage, your present and your fluid future full of possibilities.
Night wraps me in a tender glow. With every step, I let it flow. Moonlit murmurs, they softly show a place where only dreamers go.